Click.
Well, might be best. Look, I'm showing off my Stephen
We're
Colbert
live.
mic. Oh, hey.
It is Tuesday, August 31st, 2021, 5:02 p.m. It is part 2 of our 500th episode, which some people would call a 501st episode, except we don't. We call it part 2 of the 500th episode. I promised you a bit of profanity grammar from John McWhorter's new book for each episode. So here's today's. The word shit and ass as a reflexive pronoun. So when you say, I've got to get my shit together, you don't literally mean I'm gathering all the feces and taking it with me. You mean I'm getting myself together. And when you say, I fired his ass, you don't actually mean that you kept the rest of him. And according to John McWhorter, these are two of many examples, and I think they're fascinating, and you can kind of see them all over the place, of the way profanity morphs into reference to self.
I just want to say something really quickly, which is that you have decided to make this monologue all on your own for all 5 days of our 500 episodes.
So I see you've classed up the show since I was here last.
It is. We are really not allowed to have fun anymore with the Delta variant and all that. And but we are allowed to have Preet Bharara back for his 3rd time on the show. And Preet, I just want to remind you that the last time you were on the show was Election Day 2020. That is literally the day. And the reason you came on was that you texted me, I don't know what I'm going to do this afternoon. I'm stressed out. And I said, come have a beer with us. And you were
said,
like,
don't have fun. In lieu of fun, you said.
Yeah,
and
so you came on the show and there were no election returns to process, and we just processed how anxious we were.
Yeah. So my question is, because I haven't followed the news so much, is that election been settled? Do we know who won that thing?
Yeah, Donald
I think
Trump
we should
won.
put it to a vote in the
Biden
poll.
stole it.
I heard, imagine on that day, someone would tell you that, many, many months from now, I would come back on the show and it would be a news story that Paul Ryan said to a reporter, I think today,
Oh no.
Joe Biden won the election. And that counts as news.
So who
Is that
do you think
something
won?
that happened? Can someone tell me what happened with Matt Gaetz yesterday, if it's appropriate for television audiences? I just saw him trending, and now I'm thinking about all the news that I missed.
I have no idea what happened to Matt Gaetz. Does anybody?
There was I don't know, there was something happening yesterday. People in the audience were talking about it and chatting, and I thought that there was some type of story. But anyways, I thought that I missed it. I don't want to Google his name because I don't know what will come up. And so it's just
You don't know what products you'll be offered?
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Exactly. It's just
And services?
yeah.
Different Pfizer products.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So, Preet, what have you been doing yourself for the last year? You sold your company.
I sold the company, Cafe, to Vox Media. They're very nice people at Vox Media. They're wonderful. We don't call them overlords ever. Did I say that? No, that's great. It's been great. We launched new stuff. We have a great history podcast with these wonderful, brilliant historians that you should watch and listen to. I don't know if I'm supposed to do plugs or not allowed to do plugs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now and then, available for free wherever you get your podcasts, and they take a lot of stuff from the current moment, and they talk about and analyze it through the lens of history. So listen to that. Otherwise, I've been just yapping, making my living, flapping my gums like some subset of folks on this call.
Yeah.
Subset meaning
Every
3
500
of 4.
episodes worth.
It sounds
I have small gifts like this, like my little Stephen Colbert that I'm showing off. My Stephen Colbert swag.
By the way, I don't know. a marketing thing, and I obviously you're very successful, but like we like to call it a show rather than a call.
Oh yes, no, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
I was going to call it a
just
Zoom, but it's not a Zoom.
Yeah,
Sorry.
We started, a weekday conference
Thanks
call.
for inviting me on this call. It's a great.
Per my last email, was everyone up to date on what we were going to discuss today?
Oh man.
Yeah. So, I guess let's start with the fact that the news is so bad that I had to scroll all the way down to the bottom of the New York Times front page to find out what the COVID numbers were. That COVID has kind of been relegated to like third page bad news. How are you feeling these days?
Is this directed to me?
Yeah, you're the guest. Most of the questions will be directed.
I'm kind of outnumbered.
To you.
I thought it was a general question to the group on this call. Like it's hard.
No, we just are all staring at you intently.
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. I'm trying to figure out when I'm supposed to get my booster. You're
fully vaccinated. You believe in vaccines.
I believe in vaccines.
In addition to believing in the election.
In addition to that, I believe in science, and I think my kids all start school tomorrow, 2 in college and 1 in high school, and I'm pleased that they're all going to be going to class. And one of the reasons that that's possible is because there are more science believers than not. I find it interesting that I think Mississippi, I think as recently as today, is now in second place in number of deaths due to COVID on a per capita basis, overtaking New Jersey, if I have that correct. And it makes me very sad to think that people are taking certain kinds of treatments that I will not make fun of at this moment, but I understand why sometimes people do, even though there are dire consequences of believing more in horse dewormer than in a fully approved vaccine. So I feel mixed about things. Some things are going well, like my kid's school. New York is doing, I think, fairly well. On a more parochial level, personal to me, I thought we were all going to be going back and doing events. There are conferences that have been delayed for a year and a half, and I have events that have been delayed for a year and a half. Some of them are getting canceled now in the fall, and some of them are proceeding. But it would be nice if more folks got vaccinated so we could all go about our business. And this idea that it's an individual choice and it doesn't affect the collective, I find to be silly.
I think you are really undervaluing the desire of the human being to be free of horseworms.
I have 2 things. One, I do not understand at all. I actually think that maybe we misbranded the vaccine by calling it a vaccine. If we had called it the flu shot or the COVID shot, I think that like more people might have gotten it, and they wouldn't have had like this type of like expectation level that once they got it, it was the only one they needed for the rest of their lives, as they do with like rubella and measles and smallpox. And so like I'm hearing a lot of people, even smart people that had 2 shots, griping about having to get a booster shot. And I think that is just insane. Like, who cares? Like, go get another shot. It's not that big a deal. You get a flu shot every year because variation happens. And so
I think we missed the opportunity. I think we should have branded it hydroxychloroquine. Then everybody would want to take it.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Or maybe called it horse dewormer.
I also think Kate is right in the sense that the term vaccine, bizarrely, has been, stigmatized by a certain segment of the population who would then be, would extend that skepticism to something called the blank vaccine. But the shot, like a shot's a shot. Yeah. So I think that was really interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just been something that I've been thinking. The other thing is, guess what I have in my closet? I have goat lung dewormer in my closet.
Really?
You have specific to the organ?
No, yes, I had it before all of this happened, and then there got
You are prepared.
Is it traditionally stored in closets, or is that just your?
No, that's just color.
I keep mine in the fridge myself.
You could also call that a skeleton, I think.
Yeah. I didn't used to mention it in polite company, but now it's really it's kind of like a calling card.
Does that kind of thing expire, or is it like a Twinkie and it lasts forever?
The dog was sick, and the vet told us to get it, and they thought she had some lungworm thing a couple of years ago, and so we ordered it. It was cheaper than the thing, but we never got rid of it because what if she gets it again? And
what if you need it to? What if you need it as a miracle cure for a perfectly treatable condition?
But can I say something contrarian for a moment?
Sell it.
Can I say something contrarian for a moment that not everyone may like? So the first time I heard about the horse dewormer, of course, I went to the most sacred platform for news, the Twitter. And when you first go on Twitter and they start talking about this, and I get it's insane, and I'm stipulating it's insane for people to trust that over a vaccine, but you get the sense that there are these crazy people who are taking something that has never been taken by a human being ever in their lives. Not to say that that's sufficient, but then you dig a little further, and there is I'm not saying it's scientifically prescribed or should be prescribed, but there are people who get a little bit carried away and don't appreciate that there are some folks who understand that there are humans who take it to deal with a particular medical issue, and there are real doctors who prescribe it for real things. And the folks who don't want to take the vaccine latch on to that. So, sometimes it's the case that the things we make fun of deserve to be made fun of, if the situation wasn't so tragic. But it's not quite as it's not 100 on a 0 to 100. It's like an 85 or a 90. And then people are grasping so much at straws. You had the case. I think there was a case in the last few days where somebody successfully sued and got a judge to require the hospital to administer the horse dewormer because it was prescribed by an actual licensed doctor. Now, I'm not a doctor. I have a doctor in my family, and I think it's all insanity. But sometimes, the mere mockery of these things is not going to get through to people who have different, sources of information, and they hear about a case like that, and they hear about someone who took it for something else. Am I making any sense?
Yes.
Absolutely. Particularly with hydrochloroquine, because there are a lot of different uses for that are off-label from its typical prescription. The ivermectin might be a little bit different, but yes.
Can I just push back a little bit on this? Because I feel like, just on the substance about ivermectin, sure, we can all, you can find a case to be made, but it sounds like their claim that it's making is internally inconsistent. Because on the one hand, they say this is an experimental, unproven vaccine, and then an actual doctor prescribed ivermectin. It just doesn't sound
Hundreds
like
of horses would disagree with you.
but so it just sounds to me like it feels almost like and this is what I think kind of prompts the mockery, is you feel like there's such a desire to own the libs that you're willing to do something as crazy as take horse dewormer. That's so. Anyway,
the other scientific aspect of the horse dewormer, I think, has been proven not to have microchips. So, you can understand, why one might have that preference.
Let me just check my phone really quickly because I don't want anyone to track me.
Oh my God.
Look, but another positive thing, and it's sad and tragic, and I don't know if this has. I think there's a combination of things happening that's causing the vaccination rate to go up, right? One, tragic. Some people say Darwinian. I'm not one of those people. Where you have conservative talk show host after anti-vaxxer person who literally on Twitter, they're like one of them, their last tweet was about the fascism of the vaccine, dead of COVID, right? And so it remains true based on my conversation with lots of people that we spend a lot of time talking about, the people who believe in the vaccines talk about it, like all of us here on this call. And then we talk about the vehemently opposed to the vaccinations. There's actually like a sizable percentage of people who are vax hesitant. We can make fun of them, or we cannot make fun of them, or we can try to figure out ways to persuade them. And many of those people are not actually fully insane, and they have questions, and they don't have primary care doctors. And I believe that some people in that group, it's not the middle group, because the good news is the overwhelming majority of Americans have said that they are prepared to take the vaccine or have taken the vaccine. It's not that big a band, but it's not just the vax people and the non-vax people. There's people who can be persuaded. And I think some of them are seeing these stories of people who, badmouth the vaccine, and they're now dead and in the morgue. And so if those lessons can be taught, then I think we're on a slower path, on a path to more vaccinations.
Do you think that, so I keep going back and forth in my own mind about the proper role of mockery in this, that on the one hand, look, I agree with you, there are a lot of people who are not vaxxed for reasons ranging from just indolence, haven't gotten around to it yet, to a certain nervousness about what they perceive to be unnecessary medicine. They feel about it roughly the way I feel about plastic surgery, which is, hey, if it's not necessary, I probably don't want to do it. And their sense of necessary is very different from mine. To people who are telling themselves fabulous stories to avoid the moral and health necessities of vaccination. And it seems to me two of those three groups are amenable to persuasion. One of them is not, and is also taking a view that is actually ridiculous. And I do think part of me says, hey, mocking people is not the right answer. But part of me says, hey, those of us, the 70% of us who agree about this thing that happens to be right, we get to band together too. And part of the creation of a certain esprit de corps among those of us who actually want to not kill each other involves a certain mockery of those who don't share the premise. And so I'm curious what you think the right role of shall we say tasteful teasing.
So to me, I understand your question. It depends on what the purpose is, and it depends on who the audience is, and it depends on who you're talking with, right? So if you were all in my home and we were having a drink, then I think it's anything goes. If on the other hand, at the other end of the extreme, because we're like-minded folks and we're all vaccinated and we get to be together because we're vaccinated fully, at the other end of the extreme, let's suppose you have been asked to volunteer to go talk, at a meeting of a community that calls out all the folks who have questions about the vaccine and are opposed to taking, or at least hesitant. I don't think you would use mockery to try to persuade them, right? You wouldn't use a comedian's touch. And I've seen examples of doctors and other folks, I've spent some time talking to them about the ways to persuade people who are hesitant. And maybe there's some people who are not persuadable, but you're directing your words to the people who are persuadable. You'd use a very different approach. And I think you'd be kinder and more understanding, even if you don't fully, credit their logical thinking and their reasoning skills. And then in between, I think for purposes of this show, I finally got it right. I don't know how many people are tuning in who are fully anti-vax, and so it's a little bit more, of a community of like-minded folks. But if you're a private person and you have no public platform, then I think you're free to do whatever you want. folks who have a public platform, and if you said some of the listeners or viewers or Twitter followers might be in the camp that's persuadable, my view is I try to be a little bit gentler about it because I want more people to get vaccinated.
So just to flesh that out, I have never actually confronted somebody who professed to be anti-vax. I had a debate with a woman named Liz Wheeler on a podcast who was opposed to vaccine mandates of any kind and insisted that it was a legitimate choice not to be vaccinated. But she wouldn't say, I don't believe in the vaccine, I wouldn't get it. So if you were confronted by such a person, what would you say to them other than what's the respectful way to say, you're really full of shit?
Well, so I had some discussions about that. Adam Grant, who's a brilliant organizational psychologist who's been on my podcast a couple of times. We actually did an exercise where he had me pretend to be someone who's anti-vax and make my arguments because I wanted to see how he would talk to someone like that. And if you're in good faith, running into somebody who's that way. And by the way, I know folks who are that way. My son has friends whose parents have not gotten the vaccine, not a lot, but a couple. And we live in Westchester County. We don't live in a red state. And the advice from Adam is, and from the doctors I've seen who've had these kinds of conversations to convert people to getting a vaccination, has been to ask questions and find out what their particular concerns are. And so, for example, when confronted with somebody who says, look, I'm not 100% against it. It's not that I'll never get one, but this is obviously not the case any longer, but it's just emergency use authorization. It's only been around for a little while. We don't know what the long-term effects are going to be, which is not a crazy point. I think we do the math better than that, but it's not a crazy point if it's made in good faith. And Adam says, the thing that I would say to that person is, well, that's interesting, but there have been a lot of scientific studies. We've studied for a particular amount of time compared to how the studies have been done with respect to other vaccinations that have been deemed safe over time, explain that the big problems that we've seen with vaccinations over the course of medical history, as I understand it, any severe problem surfaces within the first few weeks to the first 2 months. That it is not the case, based on scientific study and our history and our track record, that some crazy medical problem arises from a vaccine 18 months in. And then the second or third thing you would say to that person is, I get your point that you're concerned about the long-term effects of the nation, but are you aware of the potential long-term effects of COVID? It's not just the flu. And there are lots of doctors who have done a lot of different studies to show that some subset of people who get COVID, it's not like they get the flu, recover, but they have long-term, negative side effects that, as a mathematical matter and a statistical matter, outweigh the long-term likely effects of the vaccination. And that's a pretty mature, intelligent discussion that doesn't take, your own view for granted and respects the point of view of the other side. And, does it persuade the person that day? Maybe not, but maybe in combination with other kinds of persuasive tactics, it does. That's the advice from a particular person. And now I've ended the show somehow.
No, wait, I'm waiting for Ben to say something. I thought he was going to say something.
No, I was waiting for you. You have a diagram to draw.
I do. Hold on. You guys disappeared and I can't find you. So hold on 1 second. Oh my God.
Look, there is a group of people who are just own the libs. And they're a peculiar sort because having taken and I read about this, I think, even with respect to somebody who had a family member who died from COVID, that they're so wrapped up in the identity of being for freedom, their version of freedom, and anti-vaccination, that there is no face-saving way for the person without particular psychology to then abandon their position. It's kind of like the sort of, always Trumper in the face of lots and lots of evidence that Trump was incompetent and didn't care about you. You've made the commitment to that cause. Even in the face of death, some people are never going to be converted. So, well, look, that's what God wanted. And that's what happens. And I think those people are not savable with argument.
So, Preet, I have I have something for you, which is while you were talking, I sketched out a Venn diagram. And
Uh-oh.
people that are familiar with the show know that I love Venn diagrams. Can you make me big, Ben?
I've been saying that for years. Can you make me big, Ben?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I was about to mention something before he made you big, and then there. Okay. So I think that basically you can put anti-vaxxers in 4 Venn diagram concentric circles, and there's one. Oh, good. The marker's working. I'm so happy about that. Let's try another one. Okay.
By the way,
can you guys see that?
This is the best TED Talk ever.
It's a little faint, but we can see it.
Can you? Okay.
Yes.
So you have this. This is like liberty-based reasons not to vax.
Okay.
Okay. And then concentric with that, you have genuine skepticism.
Kate, you know how based often means not just like based on, but like cool in an ironic way?
Am I doing it?
No, but that's what it looks like. Looks like you're saying liberty is based.
Oh, right. Yes. No. Liberty-based reasons not to vaccinate.
Right.
And then and then we have conspiracy theory. People who believe conspiracy theories. I feel like these two overlap. The people who genuinely don't believe science, and then the people who believe conspiracies. Conspiracy theory. And then you have over here, you have the fundamentalists, like the religious. I'm spelling everything wrong. But then I think this is the most important part of the Venn diagram, is that all of it is people who are looking to score political points on the right. Everything.
I don't know that that's right.
Really?
I think I think
the person on the right would agree with any one of these points just to score political points.
Right, but
Ben, you're muted.
But it's not the case that it's not. Maybe I'm not understanding Venn diagrams. I don't think it's the case that everyone in the circle of skeptics is also conservative trying to score a political point. And we have a neighbor who super educated and doesn't meet the demographic. And this person said to my wife, had a conversation with this person, and this person said, kind of to my wife's surprise, I'm not getting the vaccine. I'm letting my kids get it because it's required for them to go to school. But I think I'm a healthy person, and I think we take too many vaccines. We over-vaccinate in this country, and he's not a crazy person in the way. I'm not sure what category he fits in other than skeptic. And I don't even think he's necessarily a conservative or a Republican. He just has a personal view that, I'm healthy. I'm going to be careful. He wears a mask.
No, you're misunderstanding, and I did kind of get sloppy with the Venn diagram kind of meaning there. But what I was trying to basically say was, those are the 4 ways that I conceptualize basically the anti-vaxxers. And then what basically is happening politically is the entire right is pandering to all of those and fitting inside all of those. So I think people have their individual reasons for choosing not to vaccinate. I think they kind of roughly fit in those buckets. And then I think that politicians are on the right or conservatives are willing to take on any single one of those in order to score points and in order to strengthen their base. And so that's kind of that's what I meant. And you're right, it didn't particularly, that part didn't match onto the Venn diagram, but that was my bigger point.
Can I just say one thing? I agree, of course, with what Preet said. I mean, that is obviously in the public sphere of a certain sort, we should be trying to persuade, because it's not only the right thing for humanity, but it's in our self-interest. And that's of course right. I would just to say that there's another side to it, and I wrestle with this all the time, which is that when we're told we're not allowed to mock that which is mockable, it feels almost like blame, and I know it is not meant in this case, but it feels sometimes almost like blaming the victim. You can't even you can't even make fun of something that's risible when you're suffering because of the kind of silly behavior. And so sometimes, like, to mock is a way of relieving pressure, and so that has.
I'm not anti-mockery. I'm very generally speaking politically pro-mockery.
Okay, I think that also can apply to Horst Wurmer people.
Yeah, I mean,
not all.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in certain contexts.
Richard Wattenbarger,
Hello.
the floor is yours.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought that I'd actually continue discussing weight, I actually moved to something frivolous like what a prosecutor does, but instead there was something much more weighty here, and it's this, after your triumphant effort, your endeavor to turn Tom Nichols into a fan of Indian cuisine, I think it's time to turn the tables and ask, are there any cuisines that you have yet to warm up to? And if so, or even not, if you could have your own Preet Bharara to introduce you to a cuisine, who would it be?
Wow. So I have learned, I think generally I think I'm smart enough not to have ever, nor would I ever, malign entire cuisine. Like, one of the reasons that Tom Nichols, for folks who don't know the story, he said something quite stupid, and by his own admission, quite stupid, on Twitter, like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And it was not to say I don't like Indian food, or I don't like a particular dish, or I don't like curry. And because he's, trying to be, mockery can get you in trouble too if you don't do it properly. That's another aspect of this conversation, I guess. He said, it was something like, we all pretend to like Indian food even though it's terrible, which was not even allowing for the fact that it's something subjective, and forgetting the fact there's 1.3 billion people in the country of my birth, and he was basically saying they're all just liars and they eat this shit, which I'm told I can say, and they're pretending in some kind of some kind of act, and that offended a lot of people. There are cuisines in which there are more dishes that I like than there are in some other cuisines. I'm not going to name any of them because I like to remain uncanceled. But when I took so Tom Nichols, as a good sport, allowed me to take him out to dinner to a very nice Indian restaurant in New York, and I had a strategic plan worked on with the chef and the owner of the restaurant to try to give. I mean, there are a few cuisines that are as diverse as Indian food, given how big the freaking country is and how many different cultures there are. And if you can't find something within a cuisine as broad as Indian, then there's something wrong. And he accepted that, and he is now a huge fan of lamb biryani. If there's somebody I would pick to introduce me to, I don't know. I think, I was actually on a show that airs on Hulu that's hosted by Padma Lakshmi, who happens to be of Indian descent as well. So I suppose if there's any cuisine that I have not had, I would want her to be my guide because she's excellent at that.
She is really good.
I will just say Preet is being delicate and not singling out a cuisine as I will single one out. People say there is an Israeli-Palestinian conflict. There is not. There is a joint regional conspiracy to kill me by feeding me things that I'm allergic to. I reject the food of the Levant in its entirety. Even when people tell you there are no sesame seeds on it, there are. They pour on tahini like it's water, and it's all an effort to send me to the hospital.
Yeah, it's definitely the Mossad.
In cooperation with the PA and the Syrian government and the Lebanese government.
Right.
They're all in it together, and it's targeting me. Shailesh, the floor is yours.
Hello. Hey, Preet. Honored
Hi.
to speak to you. And hello, Indo of Fun. So, Preet, I discovered Indo of Fun when you first joined back in April 2020. Before that, I mostly knew Ben for Baby Canon videos. So my question is, what are your thoughts on In Lieu of Fun format? How would you compare it with your experience of creating Stay Tuned with Preet? And do you think the audience participation can make Stay Tuned even better? Because whenever I'm listening to you, I always have follow-up questions and there is nowhere to send them.
I missed the first part. Are you saying the format of my podcast versus the format of this show?
Yeah, so this yesterday there was an interesting conversation. Ben was making some comments about how this has been sort of a participation of a lot of engaged, thoughtful people in a live conversation, but it doesn't scale. And on the other hand, live Stay Tuned with Preet has been, immensely well distributed. But I never get a chance to ask you follow-up questions when you say something.
So I think it's a great question. And look, there are different things that are for different times. In fact, I have 2 podcasts I do every week. One that gets a very, very wide listenership, hundreds of thousands, Stay Tuned with Preet. And people can get on whatever platform. They don't have to tune in at a particular time. They can listen to it. There's no video, which, spares everyone from having to look at me. Spares me from having to be well-groomed at particular hours of the day. And people can listen on their commute or while they're gardening or while they're going for a walk. And I like that because you can get a lot of folks. We try to mitigate the issue of not having engagement a little bit. At the beginning of Stay Tuned, the podcast every week, I answer for 10 or 15 minutes questions that people send. It's not quite the same as having a back and forth and having a follow-up question answered. And then separately, and this is behind a paywall because, I got 3 kids to send to college. I have the Insider podcast, which I do at the moment with Joyce Vance. And we just have a 45-minute to 60-minute discussion between ourselves, also sometimes answering listener questions about legal events that have occurred. I have also haven't done in a while, something like this. We'll do a Zoom where we have, a few hundred people who participate. Doesn't scale as well. We'll showcase some of the other hosts on some of the podcasts we have at Cafe, and we do a back and forth and do answer questions. It's hard to get as many people involved in the conversation, but I agree. It's fun to do. So I should do it more.
The Reverend Dr. Hillary Livingston, the floor is yours.
How are you? Happy 500th episode week, and welcome, Preet. It's great to talk to you. Preet, I want to go back to your food summit with Tom Nichols, and you guys also raised a lot of money for charity from that. It was very uplifting. And I wonder if that's kind of a template that we can use to kind of foster greater understanding, greater dialogue, greater respect in our hyper-polarized society.
Yeah, I think so. Not to sound corny, but it was a huge learning experience for me. And I think if you've been following the story, you may have heard me say, when we set up the GoFundMe, in connection with this dinner I was having with Tom, and I thought, why don't we do something for a good cause? And at the time, India was experiencing really, really tragic uptick in COVID spread and in deaths. And I said with my assistant who helped set up the GoFundMe, I hope we don't embarrass ourselves. If we can make at least a couple of $1,000s, that'll be something. And in order to sort of push that, I put in $10,000 of my own money. So I fed it first with, a good chunk of change. I thought if we can get up to 12, that'll be great. And something about the open-mindedness of Tom, his ability to make fun of himself for, really silly view. I think my outreach to him, gentle ribbing of him, mockery figured in, by the way, substantially, but good-natured mockery. The fact that people were curious to see, there's some suspense. Is he going to like it? Is he not going to like it? People were worried that he was going to lie because now it was, we were posting videos from the dinner. Tom made clear to everyone that he's not afraid of having a bad opinion. And he wasn't going to lie. Look, and he ended up not liking curry.
But Tom's not a liar. He's
not a liar. He's just not that guy. That's what gets him in trouble. He should keep some of his truthful views to himself. But he's not a liar. And there was something that really thrilled people about the idea of 2 guys who had a difference of opinion about food, and one person being open-minded about it, and discovering that he loves lamb biryani and some other things. Never came around to curry. We had a discussion about what some of those reasons, like legit reasons, might be. I've thought about doing another thing like that. I don't know. And by the way, just for folks who don't know, we raised $140,000. By the time we finished dinner, we were at $50,000. And Tom Nichols tweeted out, if you guys keep donating, I'm going to keep eating. So we ate a lot of food. I don't think either of us ate anything the next day. So yeah, I think it is. It's a very rare feel good story on a toxic platform that did something for a good cause. And so I'm looking for another opportunity to do something like that. Yes. Although there was a guy at the Washington Post who had an equally stupid view about Indian food recently.
Oh my God. Did you, I can't believe that you, like, it was like he just ripped off Tom and like, but made it longer and more boring and like more offensive. And it was like, even
my favorite reaction to people was
incorrect.
Is there are easier ways to have dinner with me by publishing something.
I just want to say I have always loved Indian food.
Okay.
But
no free meal for you.
No. I'm giving up my free meal. The most shockingly fabulous meal I have ever had. The one that I walked in thinking cool dive bar kind of place, and walked out thinking that is one of the truly great meals I have ever had. I don't remember what it's called, but it's in Singapore, and
That's
it
helpful.
is.
Thanks for the tip.
Yeah, no. They put a banana leaf in front of you. It's kind of like a dive. It's a small little place. It's not fancy. A pitcher of beer and a banana leaf, and they just pour curries on top of the banana leaf. And I was there with my son and a bunch of military officers because we were in. It was the Pacific Command conference was in Singapore that year, and one of them knew about this place and got everybody to go. And we get about like 20 minutes in, and my son, who was then like 12 or 13, looks at me and says, "This is unbelievable." And we sort of realized that we were having like one of the great meals of our lives. So for phase 2, we should take Tom Nichols to Singapore and take him to this curry place and see
that
if
you've never heard of, that you don't remember the name of.
Oh, I could find out easily enough. I was there
That's
with
in the budget.
I was there. Hey, if you can raise $150,000 for charity, we can front a little bit of it to go to Singapore.
God has a plan.
No, I do, but I've this is all a very painful discussion for me because of the worst interaction I had on Twitter is when I said that paella was overrated.
Oh no!
And that was
Holy shit.
I feel a bit kind of still shell shocked from that.
Should we go get some? I'll go get some with you.
Well, yeah, but and it'll be good. But that's
But
about as good as
You just said it
will
was.
be.
You just said it was overrated. You didn't say it was terrible. You didn't say the
No,
cuisine
right.
is all.
No, that's right. But apparently, I'm not allowed in Valencia, or at least Valencia Twitter hates me. Really
Well,
We're
hates
going
me.
to Hong Kong anyway. Look, here's the thing. I'll say something. My mother and father may be on, but they know this. You know, there are Indian dishes that I can't stand, and people think I have 3 heads. So my mother's a great cook of Indian food, and she makes food that's sublime. And she apparently, one of her best dishes is something that I'm 52 and I've never eaten it. Even though she's earlier in my life she tried putting it in front of me, and it's a version of a prepared cooked eggplant, and I hate eggplant. I'm not going to say eggplant is overrated. I'm not going to say I hate eggplant based cuisines. I, for whatever reason, don't like eggplant. It's very weird to me that the texture of eggplant. And she makes a bangan bharta, which my own wife says is unbelievably delicious. It comes from the loving hands of my own mother. It's in the cuisine of the country of my birth, about which we've been talking, and I can't stand it. So those kinds of things happen, and it's okay.
Christopher Argyris, the floor is yours.
Okay, just to this is not my question for Preet, but I wanted to ask Scott to continue the food theme. since we have a strong Bay Area contingent, is your T-shirt from the Bay Area Top Dog from the Oakland Berkeley? Okay. Cool.
I just want to point out
yes,
on the subject
exactly,
of this of Scott's shirt, Kate overwhelmingly won the poll today. I am the only one wearing a dog shirt except Scott, who fooled you all. And Kate and Genevieve were the bad actors today. Christopher, your question.
Okay, so Preet, carrying on the title of your recent book, Doing Justice, is justice? And that's not what you were talking about in your title, but what is doing justice in terms of confronting or dealing with the aftermath of the Trump administration, January 6th, and the administration, and is justice being done, and can some sense of justice be done to all the sort of all that Trump has wrought?
So that's a big question, which took me 336 pages to kind of semi-answer in the book. And the reason I call it Doing Justice is a process. It's not an outcome. And I think the problem in a lot of discussions about what should happen, whether you're talking about the 1/6 insurrection, or you're talking about Trump's conduct, or you're talking about, for that matter, Hillary Clinton's conduct, or anything that requires accountability, criminal or civil or administrative or anything else, is that there are people of the point of view, they read about it in the Times, they saw it on TV, or their friend told them about it, and they have a view that that person should be locked up. And by the way, lock him or lock her up chant is not exclusive to one side or the other. Maybe it's more, prolific on one side with respect to one particular person. But there are lots and lots of people in this country who have a view, without having access to the grand jury information, without having access to the documents, that there should be a particular punishment for a particular person. And that's not how justice works. It's not how it's supposed to work. And in the main, lots of people have different conceptions of justice. There's justice, there's legal justice, and there's cosmic justice, and there's moral justice. And all those, depending on your definitions, are different things. And sometimes, by the way, legal justice, which is the profession that I have been in, is not satisfying.
All right. Well,
and so generally speaking, something will be deemed, an outcome will be deemed as just if the process, the rules by which that process unfolds are considered to be fair, and the people who are involved in it are fair-minded. And both of those things are required. So just quickly, I don't have all the information with respect to 1/6. And, maybe it's the case, as some people have started to grumble, that there's not enough accountability, and the higher-ups who are involved in convening the 1/6 event should face some accountability from the criminal justice system. I have not seen all the testimony. I have not connected all the dots. I have not seen all the documents. I have a fair amount of trust in Merrick Garland and the team, some of whom are close personal friends of mine, that they will do what is, right by the law, and not just, what people sort of want to have happen because they want to see comeuppance. And sometimes it's a failure. I mean, I have a whole chapter in the book called Walking Away. Talks about cases that sometimes prosecutors can't make, even though justice would seem to require some kind of accountability. Maybe legal accountability is not possible in those circumstances. So I think we got to wait to see what happens with 1/6. But I think the people who are involved, one of the two ingredients I said was important, are fair-minded people.
Speaking of the book, Paula, a famed law student, has a question on the subject.
Yes. So can you hear me okay?
I can. That's a very easy question.
Big coincidence. I had part of your book for my 1L crim law class assigned today for reading. And
That's cool.
You don't need praise from me, but I actually thought, I think a lot of people write quite poorly, that it was really well written and compelling, the part of the book that I had to read.
Which part was it?
Baby Clarina.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And I swear I'm not saying this just to be nice. I kind of thought, well, this is what makes Preet. And what I mean by that is like one of the best lawyers in the country. Like, I don't read a lot of things that are that concise, precise, and compelling at the same time. And I want to know if to you it's that versus memorizing a procedure that made you the lawyer that you were, or it wasn't, or I guess maybe more broadly.
Notice the past tense there.
You're
not currently practicing, although I'm
really resting on your laurels.
I have not had my license suspended in any jurisdiction, although that sometimes happens to former U.S. attorneys from the Southern District of New York.
As well as people who get called out on In Lieu of Fun. Thank you to Alert In Lieu of Fun viewer who pointed out that a lawyer that I attacked on the show was recently removed from the bar. And so I assume causation there, though there is no possible evidence thereof.
Yeah.
Oh, there was that woman. Was it the woman?
Wait, which one?
Wow.
I'm just as confused as Katie.
No, this is a total tangent, and I don't mean to divert us from Rudy Giuliani.
Yes, you did. But
so I guess overall,
so far, I'm loving this line of inquiry. This is very good. Thank you.
What do you think, if not the skills that went into writing that book, makes you the lawyer that you are? Let me change the tense. Or that you find desirable in the other lawyers that you worked with.
So thank you for the praise. One thing that's interesting, the chapter is Paula, right? The one thing, about that case, and the book is very readable. It's not for lawyers. It's meant mostly for people who are not lawyers, who understand, how you think about moral issues and how you make decisions given, conflicting factors, right? And that case was about an infant who was stolen from the Harlem hospital when she was, 20 or 22 days old, back in the late 80s. And, 22 years later, that baby is an adult, figures out, based on things that happened in her family, and with NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, that she was not being raised by her actual mother, and discovers that she was a famous kidnap case from Harlem Hospital in New York City many years earlier. And what the chapter turns on, the case turns on, and this is getting to an answer to your question, is what's the right punishment that prosecutors should seek for the kidnapper, right? And among the considerations is, the kidnapper committed a heinous crime, and the biological parents of baby Carlina had not had the benefit of having any relationship with their daughter, probably thought she was dead, weren't sure. Eye for an eye logic prevailed in their hearts and minds, and thought that we should seek a mandatory minimum sentence, which was permissible under the statute. Meanwhile, another victim of the crime was baby Carlina herself, who was now grown, who still loved the person who had kidnapped her, although she appreciated it was a crime. And to re-traumatize her by having her be a witness in the trial, you can imagine all the different conflicting things. And so the chapter is about how we made the decision about whether to require a plea or go to trial on the mandatory minimum sentence of 20 years, given the heinousness of the crime, or withdraw that count and leave it up to the judge. And so the reason I picked that story and the reason I wrote the book, I think is a version of an answer to your question about what makes forget about whether or not I'm a good lawyer, but what makes a good lawyer. We spent a lot of time in law school and otherwise talking about statutes and teaching people how to read cases and having people brief them and understanding the rules of evidence, and all of that is very important. But I will tell you, there was never an extremely difficult decision that I made as U.S. attorney, and probably also not as an assistant U.S. attorney, a line prosecutor, that I could find the clear answer in a book, right? That you have maybe the majority view on your side if you're making an argument, and the other side has the minority view, but the circumstances are different, and you figure out ways to distinguish your case from a precedent. That's not hard. Sometimes it's an uphill battle, and you need to write well. The hard stuff are examples like I just gave in the baby Carlina case. What's the right thing to do? What does judgment require? What does overall justice and fairness mean? And so what I try to do when I teach my law school class at NYU and in the book is try to present issues and questions that don't have clear answers in books. There's some irony in that, writing a book about questions that are not answerable in books. And I think the best lawyers are the ones who spend a lot of time, being thoughtful and rigorous about their judgment, because the most difficult things are things that don't have precise answers. What's the right moment to arrest someone when you have evidence of crime, but not overwhelming evidence, but at the same time you have a concern that the fraud is going to be such that money will be dissipated and you can't get money back to a victim. Nobody in law school ever taught me that, and I think we need to spend more time. And I'll give you another example that I use all the time in my class. Nobody in law school ever taught me or spent 1 minute explaining to me how it is you get a reluctant victim of a violent crime, or maybe undocumented, to come testify about the crime. I mean, maybe that happened in some clinical courses, but no formal law school class ever addressed the issue. And I found myself as an assistant U.S. attorney, a young lawyer, realizing, well, the drafting of the indictment is easy. I can understand the Hobbs Act robbery statute, but how do I convince this scared person who was held up at gunpoint in their home in Chinatown? How do I convince that person to come testify and trust me? So it's a long-winded answer to say that I think what makes people good at their jobs, not just as lawyers, but also as doctors, and I have some analogies to medical doctors in the book, is judgment, thoughtfulness, and rigor, not just sort of a rote understanding of rules and policies.
All right, we're going to go to Dr. Doom for the last question of the day, except that I have been trying to bring on Zunyi for a while, unable to get her on the screen. She asks, what do you make of the missing January 6th lawyer, John Pierce? What does DOJ have in their toolkit to compel accuracy on where he is? He's the attorney of record for 17 defendants. Do you know anything about this?
I don't.
Then we will save it for another day. Dr. Doom, you get the last question today.
Ben, which question were you attracted to?
I'm trying to think which one I was.
There's one to help you and Preet raise more money. And
I was thinking of the Newsom recall question.
Yeah, Preet, can you opine on the Newsom recall? It seems, if you consider the Constitution to be kind of like an operating system, with laws and other things to distribute power, that we have hackers of it, and that the Constitution has been hacked in California by people who understand it well, and then have done an attack which may have a disastrous consequence. And I, not being a lawyer, I'd love to hear what you have to say about
it. So I'm not an expert in the recall. I don't know that. So there are things that are, legally stupid, legally wrong, politically stupid, as a policy matter, wrong or bad or unfair or unjust. And those are all distinctions. Those are all different things. To the extent hacking implies something that's illegal, as opposed to the colloquial use that something is a life hack. I don't know if there's a successful challenge to the recall process. It seems to me that people in a democracy can decide to do any number of dumb things that, in the name of democracy, undermine democracy and undermine majority rule, even allowing for the fact that you have to protect minority rights. From all the things that I'm reading and the smart people who have opinions on these things with respect to the California recall, I think it seems amazingly stupid that we're in a position where a small number of people can elect somebody through a process that seems not to be majoritarian and not to be in the best interests of democracy, even though there's going to be a vote, there's going to be a plebiscite on it. But I don't have enough expertise to opine more on that, but I think it's a good question, and I plan to pay more attention. And I would be paying a lot more attention if I lived in California, obviously.
We are going to leave it there. Preet Bharara, you're a great American.
Thank you all.
It's great to see you. The last time I saw you, we were in New York, and we were allowed to have fun again. And now
let's do it.
The fun is no longer allowed again. It's terrible. But let's get together again soon.
Let's do it. In Hong Kong.
Singapore.
Singapore.
Where you're never allowed to have fun, but it is one of the world's great food cities, as long as you don't spit any of the food on the sidewalk.
Or gum.
Yeah.
Right.
That's like a defining news story of my childhood, by the way. The caning incident.
The caning of the kid who spray painted the car.
Or like gray paint. Yeah, the graffiti thing.
Yeah, somebody needs to hunt that kid down and find out whatever happened to him. We should bring him on in lieu of fun.
Hey, can I make one recommendation? Which we didn't talk about and I have not researched, but I would love to hear the smart people in your show, maybe you've already done this, address the legal merits of the kid who is suing on grounds of child pornography.
Oh yeah.
Of Nirvana.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I want to know the answer to that question. So with that, I leave you.
Well, we should have Jen Rothman on to talk about that. Jen Rothman is a professor, and her specialty is write publicity stuff and IP rights she's at Penn.
Right,
you know Jen.
She's
fabulous.
Her most recent book was on the right of publicity, right?
Yes, her book was on the right of publicity, and she just wrote a Yale Law Journal article with Robert Post about the First Amendment and the right of publicity. She should come on and talk about that. That would be great. But that's a good idea, Preet. Like, I've been thinking about it a lot. She wrote a tweet about it. I can send it to you.
Or you can have more lawyers on to talk about COVID. That's also good.
That
doesn't get old at all.
You know, porque no los dos. We will make that happen. But first, we have to finish our week of 500th episode celebrations. We will be back tomorrow with Peter Struck in episode 500, number 3. And until then, Genevieve?
We don't have fun anymore, but in lieu of fun, we have a myriad of ways in which we can recognize the humanity in each other and come together on our commonalities.
Wow.
Well said.
No doubt
Jeez.
true. We will
Thanks
see
for
you
having
tomorrow.
me.